Welcome, folks. We are doing another episode of the Remodelers on the Rise show. This could be the greatest episode out of the hundreds that I've done. Could be a top 10. It could be a top 100. Who knows? It's definitely not going to be in the bottom 100 because all of those are just when I'm the one talking. I don't have a guest. I already know that the guest that I have is moving it into the upper echelon of my podcast episodes, and you're about to hear why, because you hear my voice. I'm kind of squeaky and whiny. Aaron has this deep, booming, professional voice. If this remodeling thing and building thing never worked out, I think he could be voiceover. Uh-oh, Aaron, I've just built this up. Now everybody's like, I wonder what this guy sounds like.
There you go. Now,
See?
now you know. Now you
See? We got a little southern drawl to it. We got a little deep booming voice. Have you ever sung in a choir, or have you ever been like a bass? Is music any part of your life, sir?
I did, yeah, in high school, both in church and in the high school choir. So,
Yes.
yeah.
See, my wife is a choir director, and she would slot you directly in that bass section. So you'd have, you as a younger gentleman amongst the 70-year-old basses that make up the majority of her church choir at
There you
Cornerstone
go.
EPC. Um, well, if you ever move to Michigan, you'll get sucked into that. But you're not in Michigan. Why don't you tell the people where you are from, and just a little bit about you, whatever you'd like to share, and then we'll jump into the topic du jour today.
Yeah, so I'm in Springfield, Missouri, kind of the heart of the entire country, almost right in the center of everything.
Hmm.
And yeah, married to my wife Sarah, and got three wonderful kids, and I love doing anything outdoors. So that's what I enjoy.
There you go. And does your wife spell her name properly, as far as Sarah goes?
Yes, with no H.
With no H. Oh, we've got folks. We've got some ruckus going on here, because the reason I asked is I'm also married to a Sarah who spells her name properly with
Oh,
an H.
gotcha.
I mean,
Well,
Aaron, go read about Sarai, now known as Sarah in the Bible. Does she have an H at the end, sir?
she does.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. We'll sort that out. We don't need to get
I'll
into
let
that.
my in-laws know what you have to say about them. So
No,
next.
don't actually. I want them to think that I'm nice. So we'll just pretend. Bailey will edit that part out. Actually, don't edit that part out because it was funny, but they won't hear that part. So, Aaron, we've done some coaching in the past. He's been a part of the VIP club as well. And we were talking, I can't remember exactly how this came up, but it came up related to how Aaron has implemented something called the great game of business. And he has kind of embraced that concept. And it has multi facets to it, but one of the facets, which is pretty unique, is giving your team a little bit more of an inside peek at how all the numbers work, how the financials work, and there's some strategy and reason behind doing that. So he's had that implemented for a while, and what we wanted to do on the podcast today is just hear about how did this kind of come up, and why did you make this a priority? How does it work? Just giving a nice overview of it and some of the results that you've seen from it, in the hopes that there's some of our illustrious, wonderful fellow remodeling podcast listeners who might be inspired to dig into it, and perhaps it might be something that helps them and their remodeling business. So give us a little bit of a peek on where did this come from? When did you learn about it? And why did you decide to make it a priority? And then we'll talk about a few of the facets of it.
Sure. So yeah, it started with reading the book and hearing about. I'm an avid podcast listener. Yours is one of them, and so in one of those, I heard about this book called The Great Game of Business, and and when they introduced the topic and kind of what it was very interesting. There's a very interesting story of the gentleman. His name is Jack Stack, and so his company called SRC is actually.
Sounds like a made up name.
It does, yeah,
It
yeah.
does.
But
Sounds like a actor.
so Jack and his company are right here in Springfield, Missouri, which was just kind of interesting. And so
Hmm.
read the book, really, really enjoyed the book, and so then here in our town, the Great Game of Business, like coaching company, if you will, it's one of their many divisions, is here. And so I went, paid for a conference, and I went to the conference. And so then I was like, hey, this would be awesome. And I only had two carpenters at the time, maybe three. But I was like, well, we'll implement this. And so I tried to kind of self implement, if you will, for probably 6 months to a year. And then I was like, this just isn't going that well. We're really not doing it anywhere near what I know I should be doing. And so as we were continuing to grow, I reached out and got a coach. And so, the big thing is that, it's kind of the scary thing. So Jack is called the father of open book management, if you will.
Mm.
And so the scary thing for some business owners, right, is I don't want to share all of my financials with my team. I don't want them to see what I make or what everybody makes. And so, those myths that are out there, within my team, there is no salaries that are shared. My team doesn't, particularly know what it is that I make and what I bring home. But what they do know is we have a focus, and you can choose that focus as a team. And so, like, our critical number is our net operating income. And so everybody knows for the year, what number are we going for, and how are we going to get there? And so we built that plan around how we're going to get there.
And so even as people start to dig into it, or they hear open book management, you kind of preface it of, hey, don't just rush to the negatives of this or the what ifs of this. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach it and flavors in which you can roll it out where, yes, it is open book, approach and management, but that does not mean that everybody's in everybody else's business and knowing all of the details.
That's correct. Yeah.
Cool. If I could rewind just a minute, one thing I've noticed from my friend Aaron over the years is he mentioned podcast listener and just books and whatnot. Just a reminder for me and also for listeners that in order to keep kind of fired up about our business, to figure out, what's the next thing I'm going to tackle, we need to keep fueling ourselves with new ideas. I suppose listening to a podcast like this will hopefully be part of that mix, but we need to keep fueling ourselves with new ideas, fresh ideas, things for us to kind of ponder and maybe turn into goals and things we implement. I think sometimes because we're pouring out to our clients and our team and our trades, and we're just pouring out all day long, we kind of forget that if we're running on E and we are leaders in our business, that combination is not good. And I've noticed that Aaron has not been shy about, yes, reading, but also just investing in coaching and kind of speeding. And even what you just described, I tried to do this on my own, but I realized that with a little bit of investment in here, I could probably speed up the implementation of it and improve the quality of the implementation. So I just wanted to unpack that a little bit. So give us kind of the overview of, and what's nice about this is I don't know a lot about this particular topic. So I'm kind of asking out of my own ignorance is probably a negative word, but my own not knowing about it. So give us kind of the overview of how this works in your company.
Yeah, so it really starts with kicking things off, right, and sharing everyone, the reason and the rationale behind it, which has been incredibly helpful. Just as so one of the pieces is just it's very interesting, right? That even in high schools, right, financial education is just limited to very I would say high level topics.
Mm-hmm.
And so the what I've enjoyed is just teaching my team we just had a conversation actually last Monday around our P&L. And so many people look at a P&L and they're so the question I just posed to them was, are all cash transactions, are they recorded on the P&L? And so, again, because they don't fully understand, everyone said, yes, it's all there. I was like, okay, well, what about when we buy a truck or when we sell a truck? Or what if I go and get a bank loan? Does that show up on our P&L? And right, the answer to all of those answers to those questions is no. And so
Yeah.
I love the opportunity to teach around that. And then so as my team, right, gets smarter around those aspects of how a business runs and what shows up here and what shows up over there, and in terms of the three different financial statements, then when they're out in the field, they can be making decisions for our company as a whole that will move us in the right direction. And so I would say that's the big piece. Is it starts with that education, sharing with them and helping them to understand the ins and outs of the finances. And so then from there, we can then, what I also love about the great game of business is then there's a thing called HIP, which is high involvement planning. So, kind of in the fall, right, we're going to start building a budget for the following year and building a plan. And so we come as a leadership team, we kind of do that part, the hard work of that. But then we come to the team and say, okay, here's the plan that we kind of see. We also as a team will do a SWOT analysis, right? And we'll say, what are the things that are affecting us right now? And what are the things that may catch us next year, right? Obviously higher interest rates, that is something. So what are we going to do to combat that? And so then we get everybody's buy-in to that plan. And then for that next year, we're just working the plan and updating to where we hope to be. So
high involvement planning. So that's a piece of the great game of business. And the example you gave, because it was what you did just this past Monday of, we talked about cash transactions, and, I would almost consider that to be a little bit more college level understanding of P&L and numbers, right? And that was the first thing that came to your mind because you just recently did it. I would imagine that as you kind of roll this out with existing team or with new employees, we kind of start maybe more with the middle school and high school side of things, of just really understanding cost of goods sold and gross profit and overhead expenses. So if I could go down the rabbit hole of, you can choose what is your key metric. You said, we really focus on net operating income. So how do you define that, and tell us about that metric and how you kind of manage and roll this out with that?
Yeah, so it can be, our coach that we had with the Great Game of Business, right? He shared lots of examples with our leadership team. It could be return on assets. It could be your net operating income percentage, right? It could be your gross profit percentage. And so when you look at all of those different metrics and many more, right, are options to take a look at, it becomes, in my opinion, and as our leadership team kind of debated it, if you will, is net operating income was right. I mean, that's that fuel, right? Because we're making it all the way through gross profit, but if we're not controlling all of our overhead expenses, right, then we can get to the bottom and the bucket is dry. And so, yeah, just as a team, again, we just decided that was the number we felt was the most critical number. And so then in our weekly huddles, so there's a kind of a difference. There's a monthly huddle because in construction, right, it's a very heavy transaction, but right, in terms of, we may invoice for $30,000, and then of course you have the whole work in progress that you got. So it's tough to do it on a weekly basis to really kind of true things up, but on a monthly basis, you can. And so we have a monthly huddle where in that huddle, we walk through where we at, or where are we in regards to our plan, and then, or the budget, and then, kind of what the last month looked like, as well as, right, we know that it's really important to look at a series of months. You want to look at not just
even the year-to-date aspect.
Exactly. So we do that, but then on a weekly basis, we have the smaller numbers, right? That if we're hitting those numbers, then we should be getting close to hitting the net operating. And so that's like, how many phone calls came in? How many design appointments did we do? How many designs did we sell? How many projects? And so kind of all of those, right, are all numbers that in the end point to our critical number of net operating income.
Yeah. So if my critical number that I'm measuring against is that net operating income, that's going to tie in with pretty much every aspect of my business. On the sales side, I'm going to need to be really pushing. I mean, you start even with the design. I need a certain number of leads coming in, and then I need a certain number of design retainers signed. We need a certain amount of revenue that we've sold, and then it starts touching into the production side. Our net operating income number is easier to hit the higher my gross profit margin is. If our goal is a 35% gross profit margin, if we have slippage and that's moving down to 30%, that's a dial that's going to affect our main number. And it's interesting that you did choose the main thing to focus on, which is kind of more the net operating income versus gross profit, because you wanted to take into consideration, hey team, we also have these overhead expenses. We have designers, we have rent, we have marketing and advertising. So it really helps kind of them to understand that all these different levers, all these different dials that we can adjust, all of them play together. So the weekly meetings, you're measuring those things, you're paying attention to that. And then every month, all right, we have our monthly goal, we have our actual result, and then we also have our year-to-date numbers. Okay, so that's making sense. What else in the kind of the measuring? So I wanted to hear a little bit more on anything else as far as the structure of how you roll this out, and then I wanted to hear a little bit more on, all right, we're doing it. Here's what I've really liked about it. Here are the results that we've seen from it. But anything else structure-wise that's kind of key to making this happen for you?
Yes, I mean, besides the high involvement planning where you come up together or come up as a team and buy into the plan, then,
Yep.
as an owner, I mean, and again, Great Game of Business lays this out, and you don't have to do this piece, but we do, right? Because I want my team to be incentivized. And so another big piece of it is just called the stake in the outcome. The other thing is it's in different than a profit sharing plan. It's called the gain sharing plan, if you will. And so, right, is like, here's where we want to be, right? If you just take simple numbers, if it's $100,000 is our net operating income, well, if our team crushes it and we get $150,000 net income, right, or whatever your number
Yep.
is, well, then that's the gain that above, right? And so the whole idea is that if the company's doing that well, I'm not the one making that happen, right? We as a team are making that happen. And so there's a percentage of that then that is shared. And so that's just called the stake in the outcome plan. It's
SIO is the file you sent over.
Exactly. And so, we every month we'll talk about, hey, where we are in regards to plans. So they know, right? But, and then on that plan, there's typically 10 different levels, right? So it's kind of, level one is if we hit a level one, then everybody is going to receive a 1% of their base salary. If it's 2 and all the way up to 10, right?
Okay.
And so that's how that particular part works. So
Gotcha.
That's really the only other main structure piece that's there.
Got it. So we got the planning phase. People are being involved in that, understanding where our overall goals are, what we need to improve, and also the goal related to our NOI, the main thing we're looking at. We've got our ongoing weekly and monthly review of that. And then we have, you've tied it in with the gain. I almost said bonus, but you told me not to say that. The SIO, the stake in the outcome gain share, which says, this number we're measuring, when we hit it and or when we exceed it, there's a direct correlation that you can say, I'm being compensated more because we have planned this out, we have been measuring it, we've been improving it, and we have a good result from it. So yeah, now that you've laid that out, the idea of, hey, be really transparent with your numbers with your team. Set that fear aside. What we're doing is picking a number and picking a metric that means the most to us, and we are managing and working and coaching and moving towards making sure we're hitting that number. That's just smart management of our team. Whether you call it great game of business and SIO and HIP, and they give you the structure for it and the depth to it. But the idea of rewarding our team and identifying a key metric that drives success in our business, that's something that everybody listening to this should be thinking more about.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about the results that you've seen from managing your team, from the involvement of your team, the energy level of your team. What have you seen as you've made this part of your business?
Yeah, I would just say that it just makes my team feel comfortable about where we are, right? So,
Hmm.
um, since I have implemented, it's really been implemented, I would say, for the last 3 years. Um, I have known about it and kind of started it, probably 4 years ago, but it takes some time to kind of get into it, get it going. And so, really, the team's been involved for three. And just being really honest, right, is the first year was really, really good. We kicked it off and we hit a level 6 through that year. So everybody got a 6% bonus in regards to where they were. The
Is that a
crazy
one time a year, just at the end of the year that happened?
you can choose as the
Okay.
owner or implementer. The way that I do it is, and the way that they suggest is, it's a percentage basis. And so you could do quarter one and it'd be 10%. And then the next quarter two, 20%, and then 30%, and then 40%. All of that should, if I did my math right, that should
Got
equal
it.
100. We basically just, I think, hold off on quarter one because 10% is just so small. Of And the way that that works is you're true in it. So like if in quarter one you're at level 10 and you're killing it, right? Then they only get 10% of that yearly bonus
Yep.
because there's a whole lot of the year left and things could happen. And so you don't want, but you can find out all of those particulars. But I would say, so the first year going into November, when we did our monthly huddle, it's always around the 15th or so by the time we're able to clean up and true up the books. And so we were at level 4 somewhere around November 15th. And so, it was like, guys, hey, we're killing it here and we're doing well. You're getting a bonus, as long as the card doesn't go off crazy. And we had an amazing December that
Hmm.
year, to push us 2 levels higher, and we ended up at a level 6, which was pretty incredible. But then since then, because you and I have kind of talked about this a little bit, and being a part of the VIP group, but I was beating my head against the wall since really that period in time to try to find lead carpenters, train them up, and it was not working,
Hmm.
quite honestly. And I probably let that and pushed that probably too hard, for too long. And so this year we have switched. But so last year, we had some carpenters that really screwed some things up. Kind of having a really, really good start to that year. Had to let one carpenter go that really screwed up 2 projects. We basically had to go and completely tear out all the work, go
Yes.
and redo everything. So as you know, not only did we lose opportunity to put new work in place, we were doing the rework. So that really puts you in the hole. And so we dug out a little bit, throughout the year. But the thing is that everyone else that was still on the team, they knew why we were in the position we were in,
Yeah.
right? And not only that is they were having to do the rework.
Right.
And then this year, we were still kind of, and I would say the first of this year is when I was like, okay, there has to be a better way. And so that's when started to kind of reach out to other remodelers, really, okay, do I make this change to go more subcontractor route? We officially made that change about April of this year, April, May. And so first quarter of the year was really tough. From the same thing, a bunch of rework, slow carpenters, all of that kind of stuff. But since May, where we have kind of a hybrid, I still have 3 carpenters and then I have subs. We're just, the rocket has just kind of gone off. And so, I'm not sure that we're going to hit a bonus this year. But again, through all of that, my entire team knows where we are. And, we had some cruddy months and now they can see we've had some incredible months. And so,
good.
yeah.
You sent over kind of your monthly huddle, your monthly meeting outline, and you've got calling out greatness, some good news stuff. We've got a scoreboard update, guild quality reviews. Here's new contracts that have been signed, so identifying new work that we've signed. Here's some completed jobs and very specific job costing. Here's what we were expecting to make in gross profit. Here's what we actually made. And then you kind of unveil just your overall financials with the thing at the bottom saying net operating income. So couple things that I see that are very key to this whole plan working is you have clear job costing in place. You can identify what your expected gross profit is versus your actual. That is something that all remodelers need to spend time doing, but I think it's kind of a key to pulling this off as well. You have some work in progress adjustments that you're making at the end of each month so that your P&L that you're looking at is accurate for that month. That's another key to knowing your numbers and making sure this happens. And then what I'm kind of seeing with the overall financials is, it's very nice for your team to understand, look, we have a budget for the year. We have our 2023 budget. It has a revenue goal at the top. It has a cost of goods sold and a gross profit percentage goal. And then we have our overhead expenses and we have an 11% net profit goal, net income goal. That's what I see on the budgeted. And when we look at the actual through August, our actual is still a net profit, but it's at 7.4% instead of 11%. But like you said, we know why that's happening. My whole team has a better understanding because they understand the overall numbers, not in a detailed, crazy way, but in a good, solid way. And they know that our gross profit has slipped because of this, that, and the other. We know that our percentage of overhead might be a little bit higher as a result of that. And our overall revenue is down a little bit. So it's very interesting how giving them some insight will help you manage them more, will give them something to measure, will tie their results in the field directly to the overall company results and the bonus side of things. It's making good sense. So part of my goal with this podcast was, wonder how this great game of business thing works. And I wonder how it's worked for Aaron and how the results have been. And I have a understanding and clarity of that. And I bet you that people listening are going, I understand the concept of this. Maybe I'm going to pick up this book. Maybe I'm going to listen to some podcasts related to the great game of business and get a little bit more inspired on it. So what else are we missing related to this? Or what else would you kind of emphasize to kind of round out how this works and how it has worked for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's it. I mean, my team, as I was kind of talking through a new scenario, I was asking them, I just kind of asked them, do you like this? Do you want to continue? And the answer was, without a doubt, they couldn't imagine, now doing it this way. They can't imagine being in the dark and just like getting their paycheck. And as one of my designers said, like on our monthly huddle, it says designs sold and designs completed, right? And so as we get to the end of the month, we have a monthly goal to push through in those two numbers. And she's like, well, if I got a project that is really close and I can push it through this week, then I can say that we got, designs completed is actually this number, right? And so it just gives everybody a leg up to know what they can push through.
Yeah, and to think about the results of their position, for them to keep score, for them to be able to measure what success looks like. When we're very vague with that, when we're not specific with that, when we're not telling them how they can win in their roles, it doesn't help. It doesn't help. It doesn't help them. It doesn't help them strive for more. If you didn't have that, she'd probably be like, what's the difference between September 26th and October 4th? Whatever. It is what it is. It just takes time, but she's got a little bit more heightened focus, which is making her work maybe a little bit more diligently or timely or setting up that meeting, for Tuesday instead of the following, Monday. It's making her think different.
Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm a team in the field. I'm going to think a little bit more about, okay, we keep talking about gross profit and how that ties in with our net profit. I do need to stop going to the lumber yard 5 times a week when it should be 2. I do need to plan out my week more, plan out my scheduling more. The fact that I didn't call and line up that electrician when I was supposed to, and it took an extra week, that didn't help us increase our construction income, our revenue at the top, because everything got dragged out another 2 weeks. So I can see how it all kind of ties together and gets them thinking about the measurements that are important that we want them to be thinking about. Don't be scared about this. I think there's fear of I don't want to give them insight into that. Well, there's consequences to not giving them insight into this as well. And what you found is that it's been very beneficial to have some cohesion amongst the team and get them all rowing in the right direction.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. What's one other pearl of wisdom, unrelated to the topic we just talked about? It could be a quote. It could be a book that you recently read. I feel like you're a guy that's always full of pearls of wisdom. Does anything come to mind when I ask you that?
Oh goodness, yeah, I love my favorite quote is "Success is never owned; it is only rented, and the rent is due every day."
Uh-huh.
That's my
Uh-huh.
favorite quote.
I do like that. It's kind of an obnoxious reality, isn't it? That's the case. I can't
Yep,
just rest on my laurels. Can I have a little bit of a break? Yes, there's times to rest. We have to have that balance. But that what that quote kind of says is it's the rent is due every day, and we've got work in front of us today, and we're not going to just rest on what we did last year or last month or this week. We got work in front of us. Let's kick it in the booty.
that's right. On the tail end.
On the tail end. I like it. Well, my friend, thank you. That was very helpful. We presented it in a clear way using a real world example here. Thank you so much, and continued success to you.
Absolutely. Thank you
All
for
right.
the opportunity.
You bet. Talk to you soon.